Shabbat Shalom to everyone. It's nice seeing everyone here. I just want to thank Carmen. Carmen, this is your last week with us, okay? Okay. No, she deserves it. I wasn't going to announce it because I didn't want people not to come next week. But you just enriched our congregation so much. You'll be back. You'll be back, and I know the Blisses will bring you back. And you can play the violin and be with them. But you've really enriched our congregation so much, and I appreciate it, and everyone appreciates it. And everyone after services said, "Oh God, she's really good." So instead of their whisper, but that's what happens in rabbinic or clergy life. Everyone's always telling someone else about when they should be telling you. So I'm channeling them, how grateful they are. You're great. Thank you. Okay. Human relationships are complicated. Did you know that? The wisdom that's coming from this pulpit tonight is really scary. One dimension of these relationships is sizing people up. What are their intentions? Is the other person sincere or are they a phony? Is the other person honest or are they two-faced? Does the other person have good intentions or a private agenda? Honestly, it is not easy to determine what actually is going on in the mind of another person. And tradition says we should be cautious. But Judaism is incredibly optimistic. And we don't teach this enough when it comes to human relations. In Judaism advocates thinking the best of another person. It is affirmed in the principle of dan l'chaf zechut, giving a person the benefit of the doubt. Rashi summarizes this idea succinctly when he says, "And judge every person as meritorious. On everything that you hear about a person, say that they are intended for the good, until you know with certainty that it isn't so. And if you do not know someone, judge them well. Do that until you know for sure that you're wrong." And it goes on, and I'm not quoting Rashi, I'm kind of extracting it from Rambam, from Maimonides, who said, if a person has a reputation for good, and you see them acting inappropriately, find a way to see what they have done is positive. Let me get it correctly. Find a way to see what they have done is positive. In other words, you see someone who's doesn't seem quite right, find a way in your mind that it is right. And if it turns out not to be right, okay. But you give the person the benefit of the doubt. This teaching is quite relevant based on this week's news. And I'm not talking about Congress. I can't handle that. I just can't handle that. Don't get me into that black hole. We'll never get out of it. Something I think equally interesting and probably in the long term, maybe even more important. Some in the Jewish community were suspicious, even antagonistic, to Pope Benedict XVI, who was laid to rest yesterday. Born Joseph Ratzinger in Germany in 1927, Benedict spent a portion of his teenage years in the Hitler Youth Organization, something that was mandatory for boys in Germany at that time, and that he explained as necessary to obtain tuition at his seminary. Those who knew him at the time indicated that his participation was very reluctant, and many Jewish groups who worked with him after the war said he had long worked to rectify the association. Regardless, this part of his youth has created lasting suspicion among many Jews. Pope Benedict issued a decree lifting the excommunication of 4 bishops thrown out of the church in 1988. The 4 bishops lead the ultra-conservative Society of St. Pius X, which has rejected modernization of the Roman Catholic worship and doctrine, and these men expressed anti-Semitic and Holocaust-denying positions. Benedict supported the canonization of Pope Pius XII. Pius has long been accused by Jewish groups of at best remaining silent and at worst being Hitler's pope as the Holocaust raged across Europe. Now, all of these things are in part true, but I think that we need to practice l'chaf-zechut, giving a person the benefit of the doubt. Simply because in spite of some mistakes and poor decisions, the totality of his papacy was a dedication to the reconciliation between the church and Judaism. Now let me give you the facts. It's okay to make these random comments. Let's actually deal with what he said and what he taught. For many centuries, the Catholic Church espoused supersessionism, which is the belief that the church had replaced the Jewish people as the bearers of God's covenant. It's called replacement theology, and some of the crazy religious groups in the United States today adhere to that idea, and they're very dangerous. The Pope, in the most explicit terms, rejected this. And in his words spoken to this great synagogue in Rome in 2010, said the following, then I'll kind of interpret it a little bit. He said, "The people of Israel have been liberated many times from the hands of their enemies in times of anti-Semitism, in the dramatic moments of the Shoah. The hand of the Almighty has supported and guided them." And this is the key sentence. "The favor of the God of the covenant has always accompanied them, giving them the strength to overcome trials. To this divine loving attention, your Jewish community, present in the city of Rome for more than 2,000 years, can also render testimony." Now, the Pope is one of the great scholars and theologians in the modern church history. And it cannot be overestimated or overemphasized that Benedict could simply have made a nebulous statement about the Jewish people. But instead, he referenced the covenant between the Jewish people and God. And he made it clear that the covenant between God and the Jewish people is sacrosanct, and it's a covenant that cannot be broken. That sounds simple. That's a radical restatement of the original ideas of the Roman Catholic Church. Upon retirement, no longer speaking for the church, but for his deep theological beliefs about what is authentic Roman Catholic ideology or theology, he rejected the whole idea of proselytization of the Jews. And in 2018, he wrote that proselytizing is contrary to the essence of the New Testament. And let me read you what he said. And obviously he's writing as a theologian, but it's clear, and I'll indicate the statement where it's very clear. He says, "The Gospel of St. Matthew ends with the commission given to the disciples to go forth into all the world and make all nations and disciples of Jesus." This, the idea of a missionizing church. Missionary activities among all people and cultures, that is the assignment Christ has left to his followers. In other words, the goal is to go out and to bring people to the church. That is why the missionary mandate is universal, with one exception. A mission to the Jews was not intended and not needed for the simple reason that they alone among the peoples already knew the unknown God. Jews are not to be proselytized, they do not need it. Again, an incredible statement. It's not what we should leave. I always say to people who want to proselytize me, and for some reason I'm a magnet for people who want to proselytize me. No, I'm being very serious. And you know what I say to them? It's terrible what I say. Can I tell you what I say to them? I say, we live, in the past 100 years, 1/3 of the Jewish people were murdered. Can you leave us the hell alone? That's theologically very sound, isn't it? Leave us alone. But you look, you can see this is very serious in terms of church doctrine. Let me give you another example. The former chief rabbi of Ireland is a man named David Rosen, a very distinguished, articulate Orthodox rabbi. And he writes about Cardinal Ratzinger involvement in the fundamental agreement between the state of Israel and the church. And I quote him in an article that he published this week. He says, one of Ratzinger's closest Israeli friends, the late Professor Tzvi Wroblewski of the Hebrew University, told me that the cardinal phoned him from Rome to express his joy and congratulations on this agreement. In 2006, a year after Pope Paul's death, Benedict visited Auschwitz. He denounced the mass murder of the European Jews by his native country and confessed that it was hard for a pope from Germany even to speak at Auschwitz. He added it was particularly troubling for a Christian for a pope from Germany to speak in I quote, this place of horror. Benedict avoided using his native German language, speaking instead in Italian. He met 32 camp survivors, most of them Catholics. He made no mention of the controversy over Pius XII's wartime role. Now, I could give you other examples, and this is my point, and it's not complicated, but I think it's important to make. Was Pope Benedict perfect? Certainly not. None of us are, and he would say it himself, a flawed person. Did he make some mistakes? Yes. Did he sometimes say things that could be interpreted negatively towards the Jews or insensitive to the Jews? Yes, certainly. But I believe that his record and his teachings overwhelmingly demand of us l'chaf zechut, giving him the benefit of the doubt. I believe that his actions show that he was a lover of the Jewish people, a person dedicated to affirming the lasting importance of Judaism, who was offended by missionary activities. We mourn this great but flawed human being. He was a spiritual leader of tremendous depth who was fully committed to the historic reconciliation between the Catholic Church and the Jewish people. He did much to achieve it. One footnote is when I was in New York before I came here, it was a couple weeks before Passover, and he was speaking when he was in New York at Park East Synagogue, which was like 2 blocks from where I worked. They didn't invite me. Shows you my status in New York City, and I'll never forgive them for not inviting me. But may his followers find comfort, and may our community find reassurance in his teachings. His life certainly should be a sign of hope for the Jewish people. Shabbat Shalom.